That is the sound of a rail-powered, burst-fire APS gun in From the Depths, a game where you can build some truly ridiculous weapons of mass destruction. And today I'm going to show you how I built it into this spaceship. But that's not the only weapon I've been working on. I built 2 other versions of the Gungnir, each using a completely different weapon and each built around a different set of goals. So let's talk about that. This is Salty and welcome back to the channel. On the last video I built this ship, the Gungnir, from scratch. I wanted to build a spaceship that was able to traverse from underwater all the way up into space. And the way that I did that was with the engine. Inside of this I have a jet engine controlled by an ACB. That ACB triggers an atmosphere to provide thrust in order to get into space, and then once in space converts all of that thrust into power to run the ion engines. It's a nice little trick and I showed that in the last video. Now, because I have a bunch of mimic blocks on here, it's kind of hard to tell exactly what's going on, so I'd like to go over it with this ship. On this one, I've removed all the mimic blocks, however, it's functionally the same. Just to give you an idea about what it looked like at the end of the last video, it was pretty barren and empty inside of here, with a lot of strange geometry to navigate. And that's what I want to talk about in this video, is how I built 3 different weapons inside of this strange geometry. One of the cool things about building a ship like this is you get to be very freeform with your weapon. A lot of the times whenever you're building on a turret, you're kind of confined to like a cylinder type shape, but because the ship itself is doing the aiming, you can kind of just build however you want to, and whatever space you have you can use to increase the firepower of your weapon. So my challenge was to try to make this awkward space into the best weapon that I could do, and I tried several different solutions to reach that goal. So let's go and get into that. Heading on over, this was my first attempt at building the ship, and honestly I consider this one to be a bit of a failure. Let me just go and remove all the armor so you can see what's inside. Inside of this I built pretty much as much laser power as I could. Let me go ahead and reveal the HUD. And I'm going to find the firing piece. Yes, here's the multi-purpose laser. So currently it's at 78 firepower, which is by far the lowest out of, I think, all of my renditions with all the different weapon systems. It needs 15,900 power, which is, my 2 thrusters are able to do about 10,000, and then the steam's able to do 10,000-ish. So technically it can run both of them, but if you use any ion engines to power it, it starts choking. And I have it at 81 intensity. I guess I could get it to 100 intensity, but I feel like 81's already a lot of intensity for a laser. I don't know. I just don't think that the laser was the right move on this one. Mostly because there isn't enough room to make those long laser banks. So I guess it does get to charge up a bit in between the shots, but honestly, you can kind of see this entire thing is just lined with as many lasers as I could put in here, like laser pumps. The pumps are everywhere. And with that, we can go on over to the Type A. This is the one that you saw at the beginning of the video, the Burst Fire Railgun. Now, you might ask, how do you make a burst fire railgun? Well, let me go ahead and show you. First off, the most important number here is the capacity. You see that down there? It's next to the rail use, about halfway down the screen. The capacity is at 8,400, however the rail use is at 5,000. That basically means that I'm able to shoot off 16 shots, and that's only 80,000 capacity. So probably like 18 or 19 shots before the rail charge catches up. However, with the rail charge, I'm also able to just shoot 4 shots a second. The rounds per minute is like 219. That's not that big of a deal. It's more about what it says in here on the APS. I have it set to 1,000 fire rate, so it'll try to shoot 1,000 rounds. And in 1 second, like 1,000 rounds a minute divided by 60 is 16.6 repeating. So in the first second, it shoots off about 19 rounds, maybe 20. And then it goes into a consistent 4 rounds a second. And that's how you get that like burst fire of a bunch of rounds coming down at once. And the reason why I really wanted to do this is it takes several seconds, 19,000 a second. That's about 4 seconds, maybe 4.5 seconds to fully charge. And because of the way that this ship maneuvers, the barrel isn't always completely pointing at the target. Sometimes it has to readjust itself, and in that readjustment flight, it can recharge. Also, if you notice, let me go to the APS in here, the access intakes, and the sabot head. The reload time is 24 seconds. So it takes a full 24 seconds for the rounds to go off. Whenever I first set up this gun, I wanted it to shoot every 12 seconds for like a 3-second gap. And that was effective, but I found it to be more effective to just let it shoot whenever it could, and it would naturally do the burst, because whenever it has to move and reposition and realign the turret with the enemy, it would naturally give a break, allow this ammo to stockpile, and then burst all the ammo out. And then once one burst happens, it kind of, like a wave, built more and more of a burst. So that's how a rail burst works, is there's no, I guess the most important thing that I should have mentioned earlier is that there's no cooling. Whenever you look at the APS design for this gun, there's absolutely no gunpowder here. It's all provided by the rail draw. So because there's no gunpowder, there's no barrel cooling, which means the barrel, there's no time between shots. You can fire off as fast as you can fire off. So it can actually fire 1,000 rounds a minute, even though the rate of fire for the autoloader is 219. And what I found is that this style of weapon is very good. For instance, over here on the laser was good because it could stockpile some energy, which is what I wanted. I wanted it to be able to stockpile a bit between shots, but the damage was just too low for it to be really valuable. Whereas over here on the burst fire, this is able to do significant amount of damage, and it still is able to do that stockpiling burst. So let's go ahead and look at the interior of this. I went ahead and just used 1 clips, and I didn't add any clips. These are just all autoloaders, which I could always go back in here and add the clips later. It's whatever. I just did that for ease of building while I was testing. And one thing you'll notice is that this takes up a lot less space, the actual gun, than the laser did. The laser had stuff going all the way into the back and up into the front. However, I do have ammo up here in the front now. However, my ammo, the way that I build it, uses heavy armor blocks, and I consider the ammo to be like a part of the armor. If all of this ammo gets destroyed, then the gun's going to be destroyed shortly after that, and I won't need the ammo anyways because the gun's destroyed and now the ship's dead. At least that's my thought process on it. And then back here you have the rest of the engine. I went ahead and added 3 steam turbines, and it needs all 3 of them. Like this, that railgun up there is using 19,000 rail power per second, and all of this battery and everything is being used. Now, the big thing that I changed on this engine here is I changed the jet generator from doing power, which is useful for lasers and running the ions, to energy. And if you just put the electric engine block on your battery bank, if the bigger your battery bank, the more power you'll be able to pull out of on the electrical engine. So this is able to pull out 8,000 power, which is not not an insignificant amount. 8,000 power from both engines is 16,000. That's enough to run the entire ion spread of ion engines across the entire ship. So with a simple tweak, I was able to fix the issue of generating power, turning it into electricity, and then having the electric engine run all of the ions on the ship. That's how I came to this Burst APS. Now, you might say, if you're doing a Burst APS, and all you're doing is kinetic damage with a Sabo head that's doing about 60 AP of damage, why not just change over to plasma? See, plasma has the nice benefit of doing 100 AP of damage. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't know where it says that. Yeah, there we go. 100 armor piercing of damage, which you really just can't beat. 100 armor piercing is just 100 armor piercing. It's crazy. But with the plasma, I had some other difficulties. First off, I think the best way to describe it is just to show the interior. Inside of here, you can see there is a lot of plasma going on. Plasma goes all the way back here and all the way into the rear of the ship. I just have plasma everywhere. And I still have 2 steam turbines for extra energy generation. I have a battery back here. I don't know if the battery's in the best spot. Upon further review, I might move that, but it is what it is. Like, it takes up a lot of space, and the reason why is because of the way that I built these plasma. Whenever I go down into here, the actual firing pin, this is using 30 plasma charge per shot. Now, whenever it comes to plasma, I believe that bigger plasma is just better. I normally don't use plasma below 20, and I try to use things that are closer to like 60 whenever it comes to plasma damage. However, the original design, I had this at 32, and I went ahead and cut it down to 30 so that way it can fire 5 shots at a 5-round burst for 150. Whenever you look at the stats here, it has 154 charges. And the only way I was able to get 154 charges into such a small space was to do something that I like to do, where I add a chamber, and then on one side of the chamber I put one single generator. This is the slowest recharge that you can do on plasma, but it also gives you the most amount of charges. So what this does, specifically if you've never done something like this before with plasma, this allows you to stockpile a massive amount of charges without capping on the charges and continuing to stockpile. And then once you get to where you're looking at the target, you can send all of those charges at once in a burst. And typically you'll drill into the target because those rounds are probably going to go to the same location on the ship, and they're all going to hit within 1 or 2 seconds of the firing. So you get to do a massive amount of damage to one spot and kind of drill a borehole into the enemy. Now, the biggest problem with the plasma that I had with this ship is this back here is where I would put the firing piece for an APS gun or for a laser. Be way back here, and this is super well defended. There's layer upon layer upon layer of armor in front of it, and it's gonna fire until it just doesn't work anymore, and then the firing piece might be destroyed. However, this light here is where the outside of the ship is, and this is where the firing piece is. And the reason why is you can only add 4 accelerators to a firing piece on a plasma gun. And because of that, I kind of, well, okay, so I have a weird shape here. Let me show the outer hole so you can see what I'm talking about. I believe it's this one. Okay, I have this, like, I guess, cutaway. I built this cutaway because I thought it was cool. Like, it's kind of the signature of the ship. I don't know. It's definitely not optimal. I think if I wanted to make the ship even stronger, I would just get rid of this cutaway. I'd probably also get rid of this, like, angled part right here, because this part right here is also a weakness. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to keep it with the way that it is because it's... I kind of built this to be a cool looking ship, not necessarily a flying brick. So having the plasma gun is nice, but because it's doesn't have as long of a barrel, it oftentimes gets restricted by the well, let me show you. Whenever it's aiming, it will oftentimes hit like the tip of this or this, and it's no good. With the other guns, like over here, the barrels extends past this bottom part, so it's completely fine with shooting down, which gives it a much longer range of motion. So I had to be much more restrictive with how far this thing can aim down, and because of that, it struggles to really shoot all of its charges all the time. And it's overall, I feel like this one, I wouldn't consider it a failure, but if I really wanted this to be effective like the other ones, I'd probably have to get rid of this divot, and I don't know if I really wanted to do that. So just one last overview of this one. You can see that the plasma is able to go all the way back here, and this is the main strength of having it as a spinal weapon, is you can build in these awkward and weird shapes that's able to power the ship. Alright, I think I've spent enough time on these two. Let's get over to the final one. Now, I said that there would be 3 ships, yet I have 4, and that's because everybody knew there would probably be a laser if you saw the last video, and honestly the laser kind of sucks, so I didn't really want to include it. But I also wanted to still give 3 decent ships, and that's where this one comes in. This is the Gungnir type A8R, and the 8 stands for 8 clip, and the R stands for rail. I think the shell speed will speak for itself, and the gauge. 1,600 meters per second shell speed, almost 1,000 of it coming from rails, with a 500 meter gauge. This thing penetrates ships. It's designed to send high explosive damage deep into the ship. So let's get into the shell here. I have the gunpowder casings going to the head. There's the penetration depth fuse, which was very important on this ship, because the penetration depth fuse, like, whenever this shell, which has 2.2 million KDAP and 41.5 armor piercing value, hits a target, a lot of the times it just goes straight through the target. Like, that's a massive shell. It has a ton of penetration potential, and it certainly can overpin a lot of ships in from the depths. The main point of the shell, though, is all of these HE warhead bodies, which equals about 16,000 explosive damage, 18 meter range. This shell is supposed to be a ship killer. It gets right inside of the heart of the ship and explodes a massive high explosive round, and is able to do that by having a huge amount of penetration. Biggest problem is that it's slow firing, it's expensive, and it kind of takes up a lot of space. And you have to get lucky enough to actually hit the thing that you're trying to hit exactly where you want to hit it, because it's accurate, but everything in front of the depths is a little bit inaccurate. Let's go over the interior. These are, once again, clips, or there's no clips in sight. They're all autoloaders. I'd probably change it to clips once I feel a little bit more happy with it, maybe before publishing. And it takes up a massive amount of space. Much like the laser, the gun part of this ship is massive. You can see there's 3 different sections of 8 clips that I have as many 8 clips as possible. It still has 2 steam turbines, and it has a relatively large battery bank kind of hidden away in here. But for the most part, this ship is just a giant gun, much more so than the other ones. For instance, this would have been where the rail burst one would have ended. However, whenever you look at the stats, this has 170 APS, whereas the rail burst has 240. Also, it's cheaper by like 70,000 materials, because it has, I guess that's just the power of using rail, or not rail, but gunpowder in your round. The fully rail powered one doesn't use any gunpowder, doesn't have any cooling, so it's more expensive. In fact, if I look at the stats here, it says that the material per firepower for this one is 808, which I think is a pretty reasonable rail-powered gun. So enough of me yapping. Let's get on to the weapon testing. To start with, I want to have a look at the laser and why I consider the laser to be so ineffective compared to the others. Alright, I think I might have made my point. It's just not doing enough damage. I'm sure that if I did like a little bit more of the Q, I was thinking about putting some Q switches on and maybe making it 1Q or something, but this just doesn't feel like it's doing much of anything with the 0Q setup. So we'll go ahead and stop that. And let's go and move on to the A. Now, I really like the A. This is the burst one. Go ahead and turn it on and let it speak for itself a bit. Probably enough. Now in this short demonstration, it had a little bit of a randomness to its fire. However, it was able to do some significant damage. I believe over here in the back, it was even able to get down into the goods over here. As for this front side armor, it was also able to get down into some stuff, but yeah, it's just, it does a lot more damage, and I think the spread out damage kind of has its own nice effect, because it's not just centering all into one spot, and you get to really sandblast the target, which is what it is. It's a sandblaster. So let's move on to the plasma. Now, I also really enjoy the plasma. I need to repair this. There we go. Plasma, you are up. Show me what you got. Swing and a miss. That's probably the thing that's the most noticeable on the plasma is whenever it misses, it misses. The burst fire rail APS, it doesn't really miss. Like it misses inside of its volley, but it's still going to hit the ship at least a little bit. As you can see, there's a pretty massive chunk of ship gone. Alright, that's probably enough. You get the gist of it? I'd like to move on to the A8R, which is just me saying that it's an 8 clip. So I can remind myself. They're both A types. They do different jobs. Now this one's pretty nasty, and I hope you enjoy this one as well. I think we already have to pause. So we had one shot come in through here, get into here, and then I believe explode right here. Yeah, I don't think it made it any further through that heavy armor. And then this one made it through heavy armor, went right past the AI. Oh, I think it blew up on the AI. Because it blew up here, yeah. It just exploded here and, yep. One shot, one kill from the top of the hill. That's the strength of the massive rail-powered APHE. There are just holes everywhere in here. Holy cow. Oh, that must have been... I bet this is where it was. Is there a hole out to space? Yeah, kind of. Yep, that would be it. Very nice. Well, that brings us to the end of the video. I think going forward I'm going to keep all 3 of these versions. I think they all have their own strengths and weaknesses and will be good in different scenarios. I have some ideas on how to improve the plasma gun going forward, and I really like the 8R. I think the 8R will be very effective against some of the later faction crafts, like the Steel Striders. Probably a bit of an overkill though on things like the Deepwater Guard. and probably also the white flares, as their ships are pretty narrow. Outside of that, though, the 8R seems really good. I think that the A version, which is just the burst fire rail, is going to be very good against the beginning of the game, especially against stuff like the Deepwater Guard and Onyx Watch. Sandblasters are just really good at the early game part of Meter. I like the idea of having all 3 versions because it means I can just swap out to the different versions based on the faction that I'm fighting at the time. It gives that little bit of flexibility. It's not a major overhaul to really change them out, not like changing out the entire ship. I'm just going to be doing a quick swap at a dock or whatever. So look forward to me eventually doing a campaign once I build all the ships for the campaign, I guess.